are back. It is your host, Isaiah. Welcome tonight to the O&B Puckcast episode number 273, brought to you by Flyers Nitty Gritty, Summit Adjusters, Jim South Street, and of course, now featured on Hockey Hot Stove, the hottest hockey forum website. If you go to hockeyhotstove.com, scroll down, you'll see our insignia, and it'll link you to all of our YouTube shows. And of course, we are live streaming tonight on YouTube and on X. And join us. I know the Flyers are playing an exhibition in Boston tonight, and there are some battles there that are interesting. We'll get to that later. But tonight, a very special show. Last week, we just heard, and we're still in shock about Bernie Parent and what, his passing, which caught everybody off guard, as Bernie had and told people about all the plans he had about different events coming up. And we just wanted to give an emotional kind of reaction to how we felt, like everybody did. And it was cathartic. There's no doubt about that. But tonight, we want to pay more attention to what Bernie did on the ice and some of the career highlights. And I think it'll be something that'll be useful for people who watched him play, like myself, but also for generations that have gone since, have enjoyed him off the ice at many events. And they'll really be surprised at some of the things that happened in his career that went into making him the Hall of Famer, two-time Cup winner that he was, and I think also the great person that we all loved. And after that, we have a special segment, and he's joining us tonight. Sam Carchidi, still writing for the Hockey News, wrote for the Flyers for many years, to talk about his book, Bullies. Sam, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us tonight to talk about the Flyers and your new book.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And you mentioned Bernie. I've been in the business for over 50 years, and he's the most special athlete I ever had the honor and privilege to cover. He was just, I know you said you want to talk about his accomplishments on the ice, but I just have to take a second to say he was just an unbelievable guy off the ice. I had some personal experiences with him, and I've done a lot of stories over the years. When I was with the Philadelphia Inquirer, and I've written some hockey books, and Bernie was always there. Give me a call, whatever you need. And we would text. He would text me every Father's Day just to wish me happy Father's Day. Have a great day. That's the kind of person Bernie Parent was. And it's still difficult for me to say was, because he was so full of life that it just seems impossible that he's gone. I talked to Bernie last week. It was about 30 hours before he passed. And we talked for about 15 minutes. And the new book that I did with Jeff Hare, I was talking to Bernie about it because, Bernie's a big part of the book too. And I asked him if he would mind sitting with me at Xfinity before a Flyers game. And the Flyers have been nice enough to give us some time there to do book signings. And Bernie said, again, whatever you need, I'm in, and look forward to it, and that kind of thing. I mean, he just never said no. And I don't think I ever came away from a conversation with Bernie not feeling happy, uplifted. I mean, that was Bernie. He just brought so much joy to everybody. And, he dressed up as Santa Claus, and in a way he was a Santa Claus figure. I'm not trying to be too hokey or anything, but he was just a special person. I mean, if the Flyers needed somebody because they were doing a food drive for the homeless or whatever, there was Bernie, hand raised, I'm in. I mean, whatever anybody needed, Bernie was there. And he always had a story, always had a joke, some of them which I can't repeat here, but he was just such a special person. And sometimes that kind of overshadowed the great goaltender that he was. Like some people that weren't around during his career probably didn't realize how dominating he was. He was a Hall of Fame goalie. I mean, he was spectacular. I mean, that's the only way. But as spectacular as he was in net, he was even more spectacular as a person. And not only me, I mean, tens of thousands of people are really going to miss him.
Well, if you had a deposition for testimony to that effect, I think that line would be about 500 miles long. I really do.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's he touched more lives than I think any athlete he was 80 years old when he passed, and that any athlete, I think, during that 80 years, he touched more hearts than anyone, and he was still touching them up until the day he passed, and he had so much energy. He was so full of life, and his wife Ginny is a very special person, and I don't know when they got married, maybe 9 years ago, something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just so happy that they found each other because you could just feel their love when you were with both of them. They were just incredible together, and my heart goes out to Ginny and the family, and as I said, along with tens of thousands of people, and it's just a big, big loss.
Yeah, absolutely. Chef, I wanted to go to you. Your first comments tonight, and you had a question.
Yeah, well, my comments are, looking forward to the book. And my first, I think, when we were pre-gaming it before we started talking, Dan had mentioned about how we probably all of us grew up reading your stories in the Inquirer and your coverage and all that. And I have to admit, opening the sports page and seeing all the stats there from the box score, all the games, not just hockey, baseball, football, all that. It's a really shame. That's one of the mediums I wish could come back, if just for the sports page alone. But in your book, I mean, we haven't had a chance to preview it yet or heard anything. Is there anything unique take that you might have had that would have been different for the next group of people to come out and read about the Bullies, especially the younglings that weren't around for that time?
Yeah.
Me and Dan are on the younger side of it. I remember a little bit of 78, 79 hockey, but not the Cup. I just remember everybody making a big deal at Copman and Frankfurt. That's because I lived in Mayfair at the time.
Yeah, it's a great question, Chef. We our book really isn't as much about what happened as the behind the scenes stuff. If you're a hockey fan and a Flyers fan, the Flyers won back-to-back cups in 74 and 75, and we certainly touch on them. But the cool thing is we get reflections of the players 50 years later, and some of their comments and the reflections are a lot different than they were when they won the cup. I think it means almost more to them now, when they see this current Flyers team hasn't won now since 1975. They realize how difficult it was and how lucky they were to be a part of that. But we go behind the scenes, and I learned a lot of things. I don't want to give away too many things, but we learned a lot of the personal battles that some of them had to overcome, personal issues, personal problems, and the players, to their credit, they spoke candidly about things and how things were at that time, and so it kind of gave me a little bit of a different perspective of everything, but we go behind the scenes and we talk about Ed Snyder, and interestingly, some of his kids think that because he was bullied as a kid, he grew up in D.C., Washington, D.C. His parents had a grocery store there. And being Jewish, Ed, unfortunately, faced some Semitism, and it stayed with him. And he would get bullied and pushed around. And one day he decided to fight back. And he did. And he beat a kid up. And that was the last time he got beat up. And that was the last time he got pushed around. And, he was really influenced by his uncle, because his uncle had gone through the same thing when he was younger and didn't take it. And so when the Flyers are getting beat up, they started in 67. For those that don't know, they started in 67. They lost in the playoffs to the Blues that year. In the first round, they lost in 7 straight. The second year, they lost to the Blues in 4 straight. And they were totally embarrassed. They were not in any of the games. And they got pushed around the ice by the Plager brothers, by Noel Picard. And Snyder had a meeting with Keith Allen, the general manager, and said that, hey, this isn't going to happen. We have to change this. And Allen said to him, well, Ed, the business. It's not that easy to make trades. You don't snap your fingers and make a trade. And it's no, I'm not talking about something short term. I'm talking about something long term. We got to start drafting bigger players that, you know, play with grit, that type of thing. I know it's not going to happen, all right? So that year they drafted Selesky and Schultz. Kelly was in the system. Not that Kelly was big, but he was already in the system. But they drafted Selesky and Schultz and a skinny kid named Bobby Clark in the second round. And that draft, to me, is what changed this franchise. Dave Schultz, you know, people look at Dave Schultz, they say, oh, he was just a fighter. He was more than a fighter. He was a guy that gave Clark room on the ice. He gave other players room, the Rick McLeishes, players like that, some of the skilled players, Reggie Leach and Bill Flett, and you know, I could go on and on. So he kind of set the mode for them. And it wasn't until a few years later that he actually was in the NHL. Clark started right away, and Clark wasn't great right away. He was good, but he didn't put up numbers like Matvei Michkov, for instance. He had 40-some points his first year, Bobby Clark. But he got better the second year. I mean, he went from 15, 16 goals to 27. And then by the time Schultz was there and Selesky, and they added Moose Dupont to trade, all of a sudden Clark went wild because they were his protectors on the ice. Not that Clark couldn't protect himself, because he did. He played with a lot of grit, and you know, the stick was always up, and he played hard. There's probably the toughest 5'11", 185 pounder in the NHL, pound for pound. He was hard to play against. If there was a battle in the corner, Clark usually won it. But so we touch on that. We touch on Clark's beginnings. We have a whole chapter on Clarkie and how he would skip school, and his mom would go. He skipped school. He called it hockey hooky, and he would go to the rink with his buddies. Not the rink, I should say. They were outdoor ponds, and there were many times his mom would drive there and just yank him by the ear and you know, drive him back to school and that type of thing. But hockey was everything to Bobby Clark. So we have so many stories. We talked to a lot of different people. When I say we, Jeff Hare and I, we had 1,000 pages of transcripts from this. And we did uncover a lot of things that I think people are not going to know about the Broad Street Bullies. Fascinating stuff. They were characters too. And they could be characters because in that age, there were no cell phones. There was no internet. I don't know if you could get away with some of the stuff they did in that era. That
I'm sure,
you know, because I think now the players are a lot more reserved now, and they kind of keep to themselves, and you can't blame them, because if they do something that's maybe not right, somebody will take a photo of it in a restaurant or a bar or whatever. But it was just a different era. I think it was a more fun era. When you talk to all those players, they had just such a great time playing and a great time off the ice. It was a great time to be a hockey player, especially in Philly. And you have to remember, Philadelphia at that time was the city of losers. The Sixers were coming off a 9-73 season, 9 wins, 73 losses. The Phillies were in last place. The Eagles were in last place. Philadelphia needed something that they could cheer about, and here come these guys from Canada, and they stole the hearts of the city. That's a big theme of our book, you know, and people weren't really accepting of them in the beginning. They had small crowds for the first half of the year. They had a welcoming parade in 1967. 20 people showed up. The drivers going past them. The players are all in convertibles, and they're waving, and the people going past them are giving them the finger and saying, I got to get to work, I got to get to lunch or whatever. And the mayor, it was a welcoming party, and the mayor was supposed to be there at City Hall to greet them. When the parade ended, the mayor didn't show up, Jim T at the time. So it was a strange time, but they had 20 people at the parade. 7 years later, they had 2 million people at the parade. 8 years later, they had 2.3 million people at the parade. I mean, you think the Eagles parade was big. It wasn't even half as big as the Flyers, because the fans had so much frustration that was built over the years. and the Flyers gave them joy. And it was just an incredible time to be a Flyers fan. But the love affair between the Flyers and the city, that's a big part of our book. And I don't know if I mentioned or not, but we're trying to actually, we have a couple episodes written, and we're trying to make this a TV series, a 2 8-part series. I'm doing it with Jeff Hare, who's a producer, lives in LA, but he's from Roxborough. And he was a 10-year-old kid or 9-year-old kid when the Flyers won the Cup. So that team to him means something very special. So, we've been approaching different networks, and we're still in the talking stages. But so our hope is that one day people will watch this as a TV series and fall in love again with the Broad Street Bullies. Yeah,
Dan, I wanted to get you in here. I know this is something that you didn't get to experience like I did, and Chef got just a small taste of it. What are some of your observations about a book like this and how it hit someone in your generation?
No, I mean, I can't wait to read the book, and I'm 44, about to turn 45, and I grew up and reading Sam's great pieces in the Inquirer, and Chef kind of nailed it in the head. As a teenager, and I would wake up and I would open up the Inquirer and look for the box scores and read Sam's articles. And it was different. I mean, I would go to sleep at night listening to WIP on my little radio next to my bed. I mean, it felt like a different era, right? And now you can just get information so instantaneously. It just felt a little more pure and natural back then. And of course, I was born in '79, so I didn't get to experience any of the Flyers, Broad Street Bullies great moments. And so when I talk about it now, I always say that there's 2 games that I wish I would give anything to have been in the building for. And the first one was the Stanley Cup clincher, the first one. And the second is the Russian Red Army game. I went to games in the Spectrum. We had like a 12-game package, and that place was just so intimate. I can't even imagine how loud it was for those 2 games. So I've watched all the Broad Street Bully documentaries, and when Sam's talking about a TV series, that would be amazing. Like my mouth's watering. That would be unbelievable. But
and again, the TV series really isn't about what they did. It's their lives off the ice. Yeah. And what they were like off the ice and the obstacles they had to overcome. But I'm glad you mentioned those 2 games, Dan, because I was a teenager and I paid a scalper $40 for second level seats for that Boston game that clinched the first cup. And $40 back then, it doesn't sound like much now, but $40 back then was a lot of money.
It's like $300 or something.
Yeah. I thought I was crazy, but it turns out to be the best $40 I ever spent. The Flyers won the cup, 1-0. And the second game you mentioned, the game against the Russian Red Army, in doing our research, I learned a lot of things that I don't think I've ever been written about or talked about much. We learned that Ed Snyder went up to Gene Hart. This is before the Russians came in. There was going to be a press conference at the Spectrum, and there was a luncheon there too. So Ed Snyder, the owner, goes to Gene Hart, the announcer, and says to him, I know you speak Russian. Gene was prolific in a lot of different languages. And I would like to welcome the Russians when they come in. And Gene says, you want me to teach you Russian? It's not something you do overnight. And he said, no. I don't need a lot. Just for like a minute, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes at the most. I just want to welcome them and show them respect. And that's a side of Ed Snyder that I think a lot of us maybe didn't see, or a lot of people didn't see. I was so fond of Ed, and I miss him every day too. But that's a side we don't see. He wanted to be courteous. And you got to remember the Cold War is going on, and they called this game the Cold War. But yet Ed went out of his way and he practiced Russian with Gene Hart, and he was all set to introduce them when the luncheon came about. And that day when they started the luncheon, they introduced some of the Flyers, all the Flyers and all the Russian players. When they introduced Ed Van Impe, according to people that we talked to, the Russians started pointing and laughing because they thought he looked like an old man. And they thought, how can this old man play hockey? And then when they introduced Dave Schultz, they all started pointing at him and that's the guy, because they had heard a lot about Dave Schultz. And in Ed's mind, they were very disrespectful to the Flyers. So Ed threw up his hands and he said, you know what? The hell with this. I'm not. And he practiced for several weeks and he just threw away the speech. And he said, I'm not doing it. They don't show us respect. I'm not going to respect them. So, there are a lot of things like that we learned, and including some behind the scenes stuff at the game itself. Flyers, for those who don't know, won that game 4-1, and they outshot them like 49-13. Totally dominated the game. And of course, Ed Van Impe was a player who sent one of the Russians down with an elbow. He said he ran into my elbow. And the Russians, for the people who don't know, they left the ice. There was about 8.5 minutes to go in the first period. It was still 0-0 at that time. And Ed Snyder, during that break, I think it was like a 20-minute or 19-minute break, told the Russians, if you don't come back, you don't get paid. So they came back, and the Flyers dominated the game. They scored, 3 quick goals, and they ended up winning the game 4-1. It really wasn't even that close. They just totally. Fred Shero did an unbelievable job. He stacked the neutral zone, and the Russians were used to passing the puck into the zone. They were really sweet passers, and they were not a physical team. But they were a finesse team, and they did it beautifully. But they couldn't stop the Flyers. And by the third period, they were dumping the puck in because the Flyers just bottled up the neutral zone. And Fred Shero, we owe a lot on Freddie. He actually went to Russia several times to learn some of their techniques. And that game meant so much to Fred Shero. I can't tell you how much we talked to the late, great Ray Shero, his son, and about that, and Freddie had said that if we lose this game, it's going to feel like somebody died, and that's how serious he took that game. And so anyway, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dan, because that's a full chapter on just the Russian game and the build up to the Russian game. People now, probably just seems like, an exhibition game, but Russia had not lost to any NHL team during that tour, and this was the last game. And so the Flyers were trying to save face for the NHL, and the NHL president, Clarence Campbell, tried to give him a speech before the game, and that didn't go too well because Clarence Campbell did not like the Flyers style of play. Now, all of a sudden, he's supporting the Flyers to save the NHL, and some interesting things happened when he tried to give the Flyers a pep talk. I won't give it away, but it just some fascinating things that hopefully people will enjoy.
Yeah, we actually had a special on that game with Bill Meltzer several years back. Every anniversary it comes up. I think it was in January. That was a fascinating game for a lot of the reasons that you covered. And the Red Army team was undefeated. They played one of the great games you'll ever see versus the Canadians, who obviously won the Stanley Cup that year. Just picturesque hockey, but they couldn't beat them. It was like a 3-3 tie. And, exactly. But I don't know. Let me ask you, Bill. I said to Bill, I think that was the apex of the Philadelphia Flyers. That game. Being the defending 2-time Stanley Cup champions, and I remember Dennis Potvin was doing the commentary with the feed that we had, and he said the Flyers are the kings of the hockey world or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no question that was the peak, and it's a shame because later they played the Montreal Canadiens in the '76 finals, and the shame of it is that the Flyers were really beat up with injuries. Bernie Parent wasn't there. Rick McLeish wasn't there. Gary Dornhofer wasn't there. And as it was, there were 3 of the 4 games the Flyers lost were 1-goal losses. And in the other game, it ended up being a 2-goal loss. And the Flyers actually had a lead in that game into the third period. So that just shows you They were right there with them. But, and I think those players might have made a difference. Would they have won the series? We'll never know. But that game to me, from a fan standpoint, if you remember, the game ends and they lost at the Spectrum. So they get swept by the Canadians and they line up and they're shaking hands. And Joe Watson said, I looked out at the fans. The fans were just standing and applauding. Joe said he skated off and just stopped at the half boards and just took it all in. And he said, I stood there. I was there for like 3 or 4 minutes and the people wouldn't stop. And I think to your point, Isaiah, I think what they were doing, the fans, they didn't want to leave. They were applauding the Flyers for their 3 years of dominance. They'd won 2 Stanley Cups. They had beaten the Soviet Red Army. They had taken they got into the finals and really played a tough series against Montreal. Forget that they lost 4 straight. They were right there. So I think the fans were like, hey, they realized this was a special era. Maybe it's ending right now, but these 3 years, and as it turned out, that to me is probably the best 3-year stretch for any Philadelphia sports team since the Philadelphia Athletics, long before my time, but, in the late 20s, early 30s, 3 years of excellence. I think that's the only thing that rivals it. You can argue which 3 years are better, but I believe the A's won 2 World Series and maybe lost the other one like the Flyers did. I'd have to look that up, to be honest.
Yeah, it's like 29-32 or something. Yeah. I used to know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's a very similar type, and that team is regarded as possibly the best team in Major League Baseball history. The Yankees would argue that, but to me, the Flyers from 74, 75 to 76, and the Philadelphia Athletics, as you mentioned, late 20s, early 30s, they're probably the 2 teams with the best 3-year run in Philadelphia sports history. And it was an amazing time. It just, and I don't think anybody who lived through that thought it would be 50 years plus later, and they're still trying to win another cup. Granted, it was a little easier back then. You only had 16 teams. Now you have 32, but still, it was an amazing time, and it's fun sometimes to relive it. Some people say to me, "Why are you talking about the past?" Well, it's 50 years. Why can't we celebrate? What happened here, and those players are still adored 50 years later.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, they're in the community, and there's no doubt. But before we go any further, we're talking about the book Bullies. We want people to know that they can order it now. And Sam, if you got it, you can hold it up. You can pre-order it now on Amazon. I'm sure Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get fine books, booksellers. And we're going to have a show in the show link. In the show notes, we're going to have a link right to Amazon, and you can pick it up. And I think you'll really enjoy it because there's all these little stories that Sam has just touched upon. There's so much more coming up if you look, check out Bullies, the book, and maybe even a TV series like you were saying. And Shep, you had a question?
Yeah. Well, it pertains to the book too. And on the cover you just showed us, a lot of people can't see it, but in our show notes we have it. All the Flyers you have, is that all the surviving members of the Flyers in there in that picture?
Yeah,
that team?
The cover, it's probably hard to see, but it's a great cover. I got to give Triumph Books credit for this. That's our publisher, Triumph Books. And up top, they have all the Flyers came back for the 50th anniversary of their cup, and that's the picture of them around the cup.
Awesome.
The surviving Flyers, and at the bottom we have a picture of Bernie and Bobby Clark, awesome, with the cup from 50 years before that. And I can't say enough about the gentlemen here, the Flyers that won the cup. These guys are just classy individuals, and they gave us all the time in the world. And I can't say enough about them. They're really down to earth people. And as you mentioned, they're in the community. They do so much good for the community, even now. And
so my question would be this, and I've mentioned it on other shows. And when people talk about Philadelphia, as luring athletes here as a destination. You can always go back, maybe not so much with the Flyers as a recent memory, but if you go back through the Flyers, rank and file all through the years, and the Phillies is the same way, and they got a lot of, Eagles that stayed in the area. They all stayed after their careers ended. Some of them only came here for like 1 or 2 years and still stayed here. Like, look, Keith Jones is, his career was like 2.5 years, I think, with the Flyers. And when he retired, he still made roots in the area. It's a really, does your book, I'm sure it's going to show all these things. How many of those guys have stayed in the area to make even more memories?
Yeah, we do talk about that and in the book and how the players stayed in the area. Most of them live in South Jersey, actually. A few of them have, like Bernie had a home in Wallingford, PA, and also in South Florida. So a few of them have homes in Florida and here, like Bill Barber. He lives in South Jersey and Florida. And, a few of them, Reggie Leach lives in Canada. A few of them live in Canada, but I would say 90 to 95% of them, to your point, Jeff, settled in the area and had great careers here. They had second careers. Jimmy Watson, for example, owns hockey rinks and is very successful in the area. Joe Watson worked for the Flyers for, 50 years, or maybe not quite that much, maybe 40, 45 years, selling advertising and doing other things. Bobby Clark was in the front office. Bob the Hound Kelly just retired before this season. He worked for the Flyers and he had other businesses as well. And I could go on and on. They didn't know what they were getting into. Joe Watson told me, they came back from Quebec City. Sounds funny. The first training camp was in Quebec City. That was the farm team, the Quebec Aces. And he said they came back and they go over the Platte Bridge. It has a different name now. It was called the Platte Bridge then. And he said that he said there's all these cars that are, scrunched up, and it's a junkyard underneath the bridge. And he asked the bus driver, what's going on here? And he said, that's the mafia takes the cars and they squash the people in the cars. And Joe says, you mean they squash the cars? And he says, no, sometimes they put people in there and they squash them too. Now, whether the guy's kidding or not, I don't know. But Joe said, what the heck am I getting into here? And but so they the first couple months were not that enjoyable. As I said, Joe said there were 20 people at the parade, and he's thinking to himself, we're going to be in Baltimore in 6 months. This franchise is not going to do well here. They weren't drawing. And then they had back-to-back wins maybe midway through the year against 2 of the original 6 teams. And from there on, the attendance kept building and building. And they actually, then the roof blew off. That's another.
Yeah, that's a whole other story.
Blew off twice at the Spectrum. So they had to play some home games in Toronto and New York, Madison Square Garden, and Quebec. But they still finished in first place in the West, despite that. So it was a crazy time for them. And an amazing thing is that the very first guy they ever drafted in the expansion draft in '67, right for the first season, was Bernie Perrant, number 1. They had the goalies went first, and they took him first. And then they took Doug Favell second. But what are the odds the first player you ever draft turns out to be a Hall of Famer and the piece of the franchise? Either him or Bobby Clark. You can argue who was more important. Doesn't really matter. They're both great players. But also in that draft, they got guys like Joe Watson and Ed Van Impe and Gary Dornhofer. Marcel Pelletier was the guy behind that, the drafting. And what a great job they did. I mean, they got guys that 7 years later when they won the Cup, the guys that I just mentioned, they were integral parts of that. And, you really got to credit the Flyers scouting. They did an unbelievable job in that expansion draft, and it paid dividends 7 years later.
Yeah, Sam, I did want to turn it toward Bernie because that's a perfect segue. Because Bernie was with the Boston Bruins organization along with Doug Favell, and they were both taken. Bernie first because he was considered the steadier, more, I guess, in today's lingo, he would be a quieter, less busy, flopping kind of goalie. Like football was considered that, and they were together in the first couple years, and Bernie had, really good numbers, and he was really the backbone of whatever they could do. But I think you could probably attest to this a little better than I could. They can only go so far as they were currently constituted in 1971, and they felt like they had to make a move to get younger and start getting more offense. So they make the big trade with Toronto and trade Bernie off there in like a three-way trade that netted them Rick McLeish. And interesting, McLeish was drafted by the Bruins with a draft pick that originally belonged to the Flyers, Rosie Paymont.
Yeah, I remember Rosie really well. He played for the New Jersey Devils, not this New Jersey Devils, the Jersey Devils team that played at the Cherry Hill Arena, minor league team. But you're absolutely right. That trade turned the Flyers franchise around. As you mentioned, they got Bernie Parent, they got Rick McLeish from Boston. It was a three-way deal. And at that time, Bernie was a very good goalie, as was Doug Favell. But really, you could not tell them apart as far as who was better. So they figured, hey, one of the guys is expendable. Toronto wanted Bernie, and that's the only way they're going to make the trade. So Bernie went. He and Ed Snyder met in the hallway at the Spectrum. They both cried their eyes out. They both hugged each other. Bernie went his way, and it was a turning point for the Flyers because not only did they get Rick McLeish, who a couple years later became the youngest player in NHL history to score 50 goals, but Bernie goes to Toronto. His idol is Jacques Plante, and Plante teaches them the ins and outs. Plante, I think, 41 at the time, and he took Bernie under his wing. And Bernie told me some great stories because his parents in Montreal lived next door to Jacques Plante's sister. What are the odds? And he said Jacques would come. This is when Bernie was a little kid. And Jacques would come visit his sister, and Bernie and his friends would hide in the bushes just to get a glimpse of Jacques Plante, who was probably like 22 at the time, and Bernie's maybe 7 or 8. And then who would think that all these years later, now Jacques Plante is on his way out, and Bernie is a young guy still learning the game, and he would become Bernie's mentor. And Bernie told me that one of the things Jacques said to him was, you have to keep a book. I will keep a book. And he said, what do you mean a book? You got to keep a book on all the shooters. And he opened this book, and he had, Phil Esposito likes to go to the far side or whatever it was. And so Bernie didn't do any of that. So Bernie started doing his homework, and he started to keep a book on all the shooters in the NHL, and maybe even some defensemen that shot from the point. And he also taught him some of the finer points and how to pass the puck to your teammates. That was a weakness of Bernie's, and some other things, some technical things on goaltending. But he learned and absorbed for 2 years, and then the Flyers, of course, get him back. They send Doug Favell, the other goalie, to Toronto. Bernie comes here. He played for the Blazers for a bit, and that didn't work out in the WHA, and he comes back to Philly via trade, and his numbers are crazy different when he comes back. He had like a 2.8 goals against in his last year with the Flyers before he got traded. He comes back, and now his goals against average is like 1.89. His save percentage goes through the roof. It goes from like 910, 912 to 932 And remember, back then, if you had like a 900 save percentage, you're considered really good. Anything over 9, you're great. 932. I mean, Vasilevsky, I don't even know if he's ever had that. And that's in an era now with bigger pads. I mean, the pads back then were ridiculously small. The equipment was small. It's not like today's NHL. So Bernie's numbers, consider that 1.89 goals against, 932 save percentage with the small pads, small equipment. I mean, it was phenomenal. His first 2 years back were as good as any in NHL history. And of course, he won 2 Conn Smythe trophies as the playoffs MVP. And he also led the Flyers to 2 Stanley Cups and 2 shutouts in clinching games against Boston and against Buffalo in the cup clinching finals. I could go on. And as I mentioned, we started the show. Sometimes you forget about all that stuff because you remember, and you shouldn't forget this, but you remember Bernie and his personality. He was just so warm and lovable and everybody's favorite uncle. And you forget how good he was, how great he was. You look back, it was just amazing what he did.
Yeah. And the other one thing I always remember Bernie talking about with reference to Jacques Plante is Bernie said that Jacques told me not to turn around when the puck is behind the net, to actually feel for the post, because he didn't do that before. Because he said he literally used to turn around sometimes. So that always stuck with me. But the thing was, Bernie hit the first bump in the road when he came back with the Flyers. They won the Stanley Cups. He had a neck injury and he needed surgery in the 76 season. He only played 11 games. And of course, that was a year we talked about earlier with the Russian game, and the Flyers were beaten in 4 straight by the Canadians. But then he came back, and the first year back, he just wasn't the same. But when Jacques Plante was his goalie coach in 77, he really recaptured a lot of the same form. It was a 77-78 season. He was 29-6-13, 2.22 goals against average, and a 912 save percentage. And that was kind of like a real comeback for him before ultimately the tragedy of the eye injury, which ended his career the following year.
Yeah, his reflexes were second to none, as you mentioned, and unfortunately, it was a straight stick. I believe it was Jimmy Watson's stick. Got under his mask, and then he had some tough times. There's no question about it. Then he became the Flyers goalie coach, but he had some tough times when he lost hockey. He was candid about this, not only with us, but in his own book about how he became a heavy drinker and how he overcame that. And, I think he was sober for 45 years but he was a great coach. He overcame some big obstacles, and I just can't say enough about him. I think when he came back to the Flyers the first time, from Toronto, he said his personality. I've talked to other players. They say his personality changed a little bit too. He was not comfortable with the English language when he was here the first time, and some of the players, kiddingly, got on him about his broken English, but he handled that a lot better when he came back. This is what the players told me anyway, his teammates, and they would poke fun at him. But his English got a little bit better, which is kind of funny because he's in Toronto, not in the States. But it got better when he came back. And I think he told me he watched a lot of the Three Stooges and he learned a lot of his English from there. I don't know if they're the best teachers, but anyway, when people would poke fun at him, his teammates, when he came back the second time, he would poke fun at himself too. And it kind of gave him a different aura, different air. And it was like all his troubles just went away, and he became a different Bernie Parent, not only in the nets, which we talked about with Jacques Plante, but his personality. And I think that was the start of the true Bernie, and his personality just, I just can't say enough about what a sweet, sweet person he was. I mean, nobody better.
Yeah, we would be derelict if we didn't mention Bernie's last time on ice at the alumni game in December of 2011, where he had about 5 minute stretch in net, and Ron Duguay, a true gentleman on the ice,
Yes,
probably could have gotten it by Bernie, but he makes that big kick save. Thanks to Ron Duguay, like I said, being a gentleman. And I think everybody just loved it. They ate it up because by this point, we all knew who Bernie was off the ice if you hadn't seen him play. And it was a great moment, and probably his last great moment on the ice. It was a great one.
yeah, he was 66 years old, I believe, that time. Yeah. And so a lot of people in the stands, I was at Citizens Bank Park, have probably, never seen him. Maybe half the crowd hadn't seen him play because a lot of younger people were there. And yet it erupted in Bernie, the chants.
Yeah.
And the last Bernie chant that I heard, believe it or not, was this summer. I was in Ocean City, New Jersey, and went to the Joe Conklin comedy show on the boardwalk there. And before the show started, Joe Conklin was introducing, some of the people there, quote unquote celebrities that were there, and he pulled Bernie on stage, and he introduced him, the great Bernard Marcel Perrant. He held up his hand, and the whole place, this was unscripted, just started chanting Bernie. There's probably maybe 1,500, maybe 2,000 people there. It's packed for the show. That's all it held. But the whole place, it gave me chills. And, here's Bernie, 80 years old, and the people have not forgotten. That's probably the last time he heard that Bernie chant. This was probably in June or July, maybe even August. It was in the summer. I believe it was July. It was July. Now I think back on it. So I'm just so happy that he had that beautiful moment. It's a beautiful thing, he would say. I'm so happy he had that beautiful moment toward the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan?
No, I was just going to say that I remember that I was in a mall when I moved out in St. Louis, and I went into a sports memorabilia store, and I remembered I got this. It was in the closet, but I think I'm going to put it up behind my TV this season. It's a Bernie Perrant signed photo
for audio.
That, I think I got to put this one up for the season. I'll put it next to the Eric Lindros jersey. But that's
awesome.
It's great hearing the stories, because I mentioned this last week. When we were talking about it in our visual reactions, I never got a chance to meet Bernie Perrant in person, but just from the way that he conducted himself in interviews and on social media, you just got the sense that he was just different than other people in the way that he had compassion for people, and he treated people well, and he had this energy that even to the end sort of was there, and it was it just seemed like a really unbelievable human being, and everything you've said, Sam, just kind of echoes that,
Yeah, very well said, Dan.
Yeah, now Chef, now for our audio listeners, for audio only listeners, Dan held up a picture of Bernie that he has framed, and Chef has one himself.
Yeah, not to be outdone by Dan, I have one with Bernie in the cup. It's autographed. I don't know if you can see it too good. There's a little bit of glare. I'm hiding out. I'm doing the live in the chef cave today. So just like Batman has his little place to go to, so do I. So it's prized possession on the wall from that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I have one of Bernie that he signed for me. It's the Time magazine cover, and Bernie with the white mask on the cover of Time magazine. It's pretty incredible that a hockey player made the cover of Time magazine back in the day. But that's how important Bernie Perrant was, and will be for forever and ever to people that knew him or people that saw him. And I just can't say enough about Bernard Marcel.
Yeah, that absolute legend, and he'll always live in our hearts. There's no doubt about it. So, Sam, your book is going to be coming out next Tuesday.
Yes, October 7th.
October 7th. Folks, pre-order it now so you can have it. I think you'll love it. I mean, Sam's just scratching the surface, but Sam, we can't let you go tonight without getting some of your thoughts about the current Flyers squad, which is going through like a 12-year drought, really, with a couple interruptions of, pretension to contention. What are your impressions about what Danny and Keith Jones are doing with this squad and what Rick Tocchet might be able to accomplish this year or next coming forward?
Yeah, I like what Danny and Keith have done, but I think this is a pivotal year because I don't see them making the playoffs this year. I think they'll contend for a playoff spot, but I think they'll fall a little short unless Sam Ersson improves a lot over last year. I think the goaltending right now, to me, still is a question mark. The Flyers are very high on Ersson, and I just thought Ersson would be a good number 2 guy, and I still think they need a legitimate number 1, and I hope he proves me wrong. But I just worry about their defense. I worry about their scoring. But the thing I like is that they have a lot of guys that are kind of like transitioning to be maybe not stars, but guys that are going to be very good players, like Tyson Forster, Owen Tippett. Those guys, Noah Cates. I don't think they're superstars, but I think they can be very good players. If you look at the Flyers, since we were talking about the Broad Street Bullies before, their defense probably had 5 guys that were they really didn't have a number 1. They probably had 5 guys that were number 2 defensemen. Barry Ashby, Ed Van Im, Joe Watson, Jimmy Watson. You go on, and they weren't superstars, but they all knew their roles. And I think this Flyers team can be similar to that, hopefully. But what they did have, obviously, is the greatest goaltender, on earth at that time. And so you can get away with the Flyers defense if you have a goaltender that is a true number 1. I won't get into the whole Carter Hart situation, but, he had the potential to be a true number 1. I think he was a true number 1, and it's just a shame that it didn't work out. And he of course has said that thanks but no thanks. If the Flyers are interested in him, that he's going to want to start fresh somewhere else. So that didn't help the Flyers either. But I do like that they have a lot of young players that are on their way up, and I think Michkov is a big key in that, obviously. And to me, the goal this year is to show for the young guys to show improvement. If they make the playoffs, great. If they just miss, it's still a positive, because I think next year they're going to get a lot of cap space next year, and I think they will make a splash in free agency next year. So that's a long way of saying I think they'll probably fall short of the playoffs, maybe get 88 points or something like that, 90 points. I don't know, but I think they'll fall short. But hopefully they show enough that the bean counters will say, hey, the cap's going up. It's now time to open up our pocketbook, get a true number 1 center in here, and good things are going to happen. So I'm excited about the season. I think it's going to be a very interesting year. I think they're going to be better than some people think. But, again, I just have questions about goaltending, and that's where these games are won, especially in the postseason.
Yeah, last one from me. Do you think, as opposed to getting a number 1 center, they might try and get an alpha dog on defense, like Pronger, that kind of guy?
Yeah, or maybe try to get both. I mean, they're going to lose some contracts and they're going to gain some cap space. And it's a shame what happened with Pronger with the injury, because, he still had something left in the tank. And I don't think I've had more fun covering a team in that 2009-10 season. And Pronger was a big leader on that team. And I mean, that team was so good. I mean, Claude Giroux was on the third line. That's how good that team was. Carter and Richards and Hartnell. I mean, Danny Briere. I mean, that team should have won the cup. I mean, in my mind, they should have won the cup because everything was there for them when they came back from Boston down 3-0 and won 4 straight. I thought they were a team of destiny, but again, they didn't have the goaltending. I mean, the goaltending was great in the semifinals against Montreal, but Leighton had a bad final, and that cost them. So it all starts with goaltending. But to finish, I think there's some positive signs, though. I really do, and they need guys like Drysdale and York on defense to show they're bona fide players. Maybe not number 1 defenseman, but if you can be a number 2, number 3 defenseman, nothing wrong with that. And so far, they haven't shown that. But this is the year for them to do it. And if they do, it's going to help this team get closer to the playoffs and maybe even sneak in.
Yeah, I mean, those are, again, like you're saying, those improvements are real important. Dan, you had an update on something for us?
No, I just wanted to say, Sam was talking about Sam Urson and his concerns that he might not be a number 1 goalie. And my quick response is, and I've kind of been saying it since the Flyers acquired Dan Vladar, is he's a guy that I think actually has a lot of untapped potential, because I think that Boston decided early on that Jeremy Swayman was going to be their number 1, and they didn't give Vladar a fair shot. And then Vladar goes to Calgary, where they've known all along that Dustin Wolf is going to be their goalie of the future. And I just wanted to dovetail that into saying that tonight, Vladar has pitched 35 minutes of shutout hockey against his former team, the Bruins. He's looked really good. And so I actually think, if you put a gun to my head right now, I think that Vladar is going to be better than Urson this year. I'm not saying he's going to be a true number 1, but he's the kind of guy where I look at what Anthony Stolarz did in Toronto last year, and I think that Dan Vladar at the age of 28 still has the potential to become a number 1 starting goalie. So that's kind of my hope here for the next few years.
I love your optimism because they need it. They really do. And boy, I remember when Stoley was here and he had some injury problems here too. And it's just amazing. He's such a good guy, and I really root for him. And he's really, his career has really taken off. I'm so happy to see it. But Vladar, has potential as well. And goalies, Bernie Prime, we've been talking about Bernie a lot, is a prime example. Goalies don't usually reach their prime to their late 20s. And Bernie was like that. And he's not the only one. There's many, many instances of guys. Very rarely do you have a guy like Vasilevsky who comes in and it's out from the beginning. Most of the guys, it takes them 4 or 5 years to get their footing. Sometimes they get that with their second, third, fourth team. So, hopefully that happens, Dan. That would be a big step for the Flyers, no question.
Yeah. Very good comparison, Dan. Very good comparison to Stolarz situation.
I think so. We hope. I mean, the Flyers need a break like that. I mean, I got a little bit of a break with Michkov. Maybe get some more breaks in some other areas. So, Sam, people have to go and get Bullies this Tuesday. It will be available. You can pre-order it right now at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and it will be in your bookstores if you like picking up the physical book. Bullies, check it out. You definitely want to do that. And do you want to tell the people where they can catch you on either social media or some appearances that you have coming up?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you talking up the book a little bit. You can reach me at Broad Street Bull on Twitter. And I'd like to answer questions and go back and forth. And we don't have in fact, I have a meeting with Triumph tomorrow, our publisher, so we don't have our signing schedule yet, but I'll put it on social media, and hopefully we'll get some of the Broad Street Bullies with me, and
sure, we'll share it.
And but I appreciate the time, guys. It was fun talking Flyers hockey and going back to the winning days, the championship days, and hopefully we'll see some of that in the future, because people don't think this is a hockey town, but those of us who lived through it know it can really be a great hockey town.
We know better. Like you said, the Flyers were the catalyst for all the success of the other teams. No doubt about that.
Thanks again, guys.
Right. Thanks again, Sam. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully
Thanks,
we'll
Sam.
see you
Great.
down the road. Right. Okay. Wow. Man, that was a trip down memory lane.
Yeah.
So, Dan, I knew, as soon as you said that Vladar is having a shutout, well, that's the end of that.
Well, it leads me right into my next point, which is that Emil Andre, who they keep not talking about for some reason, he's been far and away the best of the bubble defenseman. So on the goal that the Bruins just scored, it was a direct result of Egor Zamula not tying up Sean Corrali's stick in front of the net. David Pasternak puts a puck on Corrali's stick. Perfect top shelf deflection over Vladar, who couldn't do anything about it. It just again proves my point that Andre, I don't even know if Zamula is considered a bubble defenseman, but Andre is better than him. I joke today that if you saw the movie The Materialists, Pedro Pascal's character had this surgery done where they break your legs and they add bone in and it gives you 6 inches of height. Well, maybe if Emil Andre did that, then they would be convinced that he should be on the roster because he's just so much better than the other bubble defensemen. And they're just so obsessed with the idea that with York and Drysdale that they can't have another smallish defenseman. But I'm telling you, Andre is so much better than these guys.
Well, I think they think, and by the way, just the latest from today, most of you watching this have probably heard, but if you haven't, Helge Grans was waived. He was not waiver exempt and had to make a decision. And after getting turnstile twice in 2 exhibition games, they said, well, this guy's not good enough. And so what are you left with? Slowpoke, Adam Ginning, and the 2 veterans. Gilbert has been better than Juleson. That's not saying much. Juleson can't seem to stay on his feet, and he keeps taking penalties. The only thing he can do is throw a big hit. And I'm just wondering, Hunter McDonald doesn't look like he's ready. And it's almost by default, because Egor Zamula is the 7th defenseman on an average team. I don't even think he's in the rotation on a good team. So all you have is Hunter McDonald and Emil Andre. And like Chef, to Dan's point, the Flyers are either going to have to roll with somebody like Andre, or will Danny Briere go out and say, wait a minute, I can't have Zamula or Andre, whoever is in that other spot, being on that third pair. I'm going to go out and get somebody. I have cap space. I'm going to use it. What do you say? And Dan, you'll follow up.
I do believe Andre's in this game tonight, and he's made a couple of good plays. I think one of them was on the power play. So I'm not necessarily I'm down on Andre. I'm disappointed that Helge Grans didn't do more. I thought there was more in there. I thought he could have done more, but I'm not a fan. I never have been of Zamula. The only thing that I think Zamula ever did is during the Torch years, he was one of the guys that got a puck through the net, and that's it. One of the defensemen. It was pretty rare at that time when they, at the beginning of Torch's reign. So, but I mean, and I'll leave this for you, Dan. What do you think about with Bonk and what do you call it? I lost my train of thought. Who was it? But Gill. Bonk and Gill. Gill went down. I think that Bonk or Gill could have made a better showing. I think and Bonk's still, I believe, still in the mix to do this. But I mean, he's got to make his move really soon. I think Gill, if he'd have been a little bit better of a skater, I think Gill could even have made a case to stay too.
By the way, Rodrigo Abels just scored again. I mean, he's probably a cinch to make the roster at this point.
I mean, they keep giving looks, Dan. You're right there.
Oliver Bonk has been injured. I don't, from what I've seen, I haven't seen anything that tells me that he's NHL ready yet, but we haven't seen much of him because he's had the injury so far. And Gill, I think, has shown a lot of tools, and they really like him, but I think he needs to put some more muscle on his frame, and I think another year of juniors will do him well. I mean, to answer Isaiah's question, I don't think they have to go out and get another defenseman. I think Emil Andre is a good NHL defenseman. Like, he was their best defenseman at times last year. So I don't know who. I mean, they went out and they signed Dennis Gilbert and Noah Juleson, presumably to be those third pair defensemen. But I think Andre's better, much better than either of them. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure who you're suggesting that they go out and and acquire, because they've already acquired guys that they thought might be in that role. And I think Andre's a good NHL player. I think he's the kind of guy that if they trade him, it's going to come back to haunt them.
Like Seidenberg did, right?
Player. So I would just give him a shot on the third pair.
Yeah, and also too with I think you're right. I think it could be like Seidenberg. Now, my question would be: do you think this is he a victim of we got to get bigger situation? You think that? Are they afraid to have two smaller guys like York and him in the lineup too, or Drysdale even?
You know, when Sam was talking earlier tonight about how the Flyers made a shift in the 70s, and Ed Snyder decided that they were going to go bigger and grittier, it feels like they're doing the same thing right now when you look at the draft class that they had this past season. So I think that they look at their defense core and they're like, oh, we've got York, he's kind of small. We've got Drysdale, he's kind of small. And they really, really, really are opposed to the idea of having another small defenseman in the lineup. But the fact is that he is the best option to me. And honestly, like, I still think that he's just as good some nights as York and Drysdale. And I would not be shocked if he's the one that they trade and he ends up being better than either of those guys. Like, I'm a big fan of Emil Andre, and I think that they should give him a shot.
It's hard to argue that. The only thing is, and if I'm going to be a devil's advocate, I'm going to say that among the three smaller so-called defensemen, he has the highest risk in his game, and he is more prone to the big mistake, unlike the other two. And he's going to be in a third pair. The third pair, you don't want that unless he can counterbalance it, like Keith Yandel or something like that. And Keith Yandel was a number 2, number 3 guy. So Emil Andre does not offer that, even though he moves the puck well, he's got vision, but he has periods where he just really makes dumb plays or careless or gets out of control. Now, is that experience or has he hit the ceiling? I don't know. And this is what is going to be on Briere's mind, in my opinion. And this is why I could see them dumping one or both of those veterans he signed, because they both look awful, and getting a little veteran insurance. But I guess we'll see.
I mean, I'm just checking now. I mean, how many NHL games Emil Andre has played in not even 50 NHL games. I mean, I don't think that, like, how can you make a judgment on him and what
he wasn't that good. He wasn't that good in the AHL. That was the thing. He was having some of those problems at the AHL level. So
I mean, we'll see. He's a 23-year-old defenseman. I mean, I don't know.
I think it's too early.
He's shown me more on the power play last year than Jamie Drysdale has ever shown me. So, and Drysdale is supposed to be their number 1 power play quarterback. I'm not convinced of, and Drysdale's been very good so far. But I haven't seen the offensive flashes that we're kind of expecting to see. So we'll see. I'm just worried that that they're going to give up on Andre because of the size thing, and that's going to come back to haunt them. But
no, you make good points.
He was a second round pick, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now I got a quick question there too. Now, if he ends up playing good, are you opposed to possibly packaging him in a trade with somebody? If he could be part of some long-term fix in the future, would you be upset if he plays well and they trade him for that center, that star center that they need? If he becomes part of a package with a couple other things, maybe some draft picks or whatever, and maybe upgrade his defensive position, or even get the center you're looking for, would you be upset about that?
I mean, if we traded him and a first-round pick for Connor McDavid, no, I would not be upset. It all depends on.
No.
I mean, it's just the honest answer. Like, it all depends on. It all depends on what we get back, right? I mean,
what about Hughes? There's that Canucks connection with Tocchet, and he likes playing for Hughes. If he could be part of a package to work for that, I wouldn't be upset about that, even if I had to give up.
They could trade York for that.
You wouldn't be upset about getting Quinn Hughes. I mean, that's a pretty.
You're making this easy, Chef.
No, I'm being the most realistic situation would be somebody like him. I trust me, I would love to have Connor McDavid. I don't think it's likely. I think he's just driving up his price, but I think there's a chance to get Quinn Hughes, because he, with all the rumors that are swirling, if he doesn't want to leave there, at least make your offer. Like, hey, look, you're going to lose him either way. you might as well get something for him. I'm just saying, throw your hat into the ring, and if that's if he's part of that package, and you could swing that, Andre Brink, and maybe a couple first rounders, maybe one second rounder.
Yeah,
boom,
but Shep, they would trade York for that to get Quinn Hughes. You know what I'm saying? It's not.
Yeah, I don't really understand the line of questioning. I mean, I don't.
Yeah,
it just depends on what we could get back. I mean, I don't think there's a big opinion of Emile Andre around the league that he's going to be a part of a package for one of those guys.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But can we? How do we feel about Bump and Lutsenko? Are they both on the outside looking in right now? Lutsenko is the one I think that the brass really wants to try and find a way to justify him making it, and he's just not making the case at all.
No.
Yeah, and Bump I think is I think Bump is ticketed for the AHL. He has not been all that impressive. He had that horrible turnover behind the net that led to a goal against.
Yeah.
I've never met him. He comes off a little bit cavalier to me in some of the interviews. I think maybe he needs to, I don't know. I think
he's cocky. Maybe not cavalier.
Yes, he's cocky, but he hasn't proven anything to be cocky.
Right.
I mean, when he talks, I think I'm listening to Cutter Gauthier or something like that. So, but he hasn't really done enough to prove it. I think Lutsenko, he's just been, he hasn't been great. He's an effective player out there, but I don't know. I think he probably shouldn't be on the Flyers right now. So we'll see. Tonight, Lutsenko has just been kind of okay. I don't know what his ultimate ceiling is going to be. So the Flyers are obviously, because of the fact that they took him over, Zev Buium, they're very invested in him becoming a very good NHL player. But, this is not like some other company where you can elevate someone to a position and sort of convince people that they're good because you want them to think that. The proof's going to be out there. We see it. So we'll see what happens with Lutsenko. But no, I think Grabenkin is basically locked down a spot with the Flyers. I think Bump is definitely going to go to the AHL, barring some kind of injury to someone else. And I think Lutsenko should be sent back down, but I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's the tough part about it, isn't it? Because that going down to juniors is not going to help. I don't know how much it's going to help him unless he bears down. It gets on a different team. A lot of people are saying that he could pick up bad habits there too, as well. But
I don't buy that.
I think
I don't know. It would be better for him. It would be better for him to be on a better team. But going through the WJC experience one more time would probably be a very beneficial thing for him. Maybe look. I think if they had not signed him, I don't think Martone and Lutsenko could have both gone to the NCAA. Right? They couldn't have gone to college. I think you only could go one player, but you could almost make the case that Lutsenko needs college or AHL, one of the two.
It needs
more
AHL, but unfortunately you can't do that. So that's where it's in limbo. What kind of productive, if it had been any kind of productive, I think they would make the case it's better to have them at the NHL level, at 12 to 14 minutes a game, than going back to golf. I think that's what the scenario is right now. If he can justify being in 12 to 14 minutes a game, I think that's I think that's what they want. They don't want to send them down because they don't think it's going to be beneficial. That's what I think.
He hasn't done it. He hasn't done it. Now, right now he's well-bound, and that's until something else happens. Because he's made some mistakes in the last game, in the Boston game. So
and also too, let's mention he's not even 20 yet.
Oh yeah,
right?
I'm not down.
He's
on
19. So everybody don't panic. It sounds like we're panicking. I just thought of that. But no,
it's just it's rules, and they're starting to loosen up. So next year he'll have that flexibility if he doesn't make it this year. So the best story of the weekend going into the game tonight was Michkov and Zegras, and what a great goal with the Zegras getting the zone entry, giving it to Michkov, and then it's a give and go, and Zegras gets the off wing shot. Fantastic play. But now we're worried what's going on with Zegras. he was off yesterday, and he had a quote maintenance day. I'm hoping, because he's been injury plagued the last couple of years. So,
yeah, that play was. I mean, that play was unbelievable. That was shades of. Michkov just exploded off the wall, and then he takes it to the center of the ice. And Travis Konechny was wide open on the left wing for a one-timer. I think some of the opponents thought that, some of the Bruins defenders thought that he was going to go over to Konechny, and then he just slides it right back to Zegras, who's in a great spot, top shelf. That was fantastic. Those guys seem to be building a lot of chemistry on the ice, off the ice. It's great. I'm not going to get concerned about Zegras until we know more about it, right? I mean, I'm sure that they're cognizant of the fact that he's had some injury issues, so maybe his hamstring's a little sore. Maybe who knows? I mean, I'm not going to get too concerned until we hear anything specific.
Yeah, I saw that chemistry. Like, I was there for Group C at the opening day of camp, and then right after that, the Group A came on. He was part of Group A, and the back and forth. Even in the first set of drills, where they're just all skating around the net, just passing back and forth, and then and hitting the net and shooting into the net. He was still doing that. He was doing the no-look pass. They were going back and forth with those two the very first second they were on the ice. So I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Flyers have 2 more exhibition games. They play Thursday at home versus the Islanders, and also Saturday. Here's an update at the Xfinity Center. The game was at 3:00. It was changed to 12:30 coming this Saturday versus the Devils. I think it might have conflicted with the Phillies playoff game. So they changed it to 12:30 this Saturday. Just make a note of that. And I think we're going to call it there. Of course, they open the season Thursday, October 9th, and we'll be back with a season preview show with our buddy Kevin Durso. So that'll be fun. That'll be on a Tuesday, the 7th. We have our show. But before we get going with that, let's have some final thoughts. Chef, you go first.
All right. Have fun. I mean, this is a lot of potential on this team. Hang in there. Enjoy the season. Let it play out. And then, we can all critique this and right after January. We'll sit there. We'll all know what this team is right after the New Year's and whether they're going to make a move or not. And hey, look, and you can argue with me about that on X at Chef the Left B on X.
You got it. The great Dan Silver. Give us the word.
Just to echo what I was talking about earlier, I'm excited to see what Dan Vladar does this season because I have been a fan of his all along. So it's kind of fun for me to see him come to the Flyers, and hopefully he validates my opinion that he could be a, pretty good starting goalie in the NHL. So we'll see what happens with that. And hopefully Zegras is all right, and we'll see what happens. We'll hopefully get some excitement this season.
Absolutely.
Fans can follow me on X and Bluesky at dsilver88.
Fantastic. Just a reminder, you don't want to forget about Jim South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia, 40 years of the best cheesesteaks, hoagies, and fries in the grandest Philadelphia tradition. You want one. Jim's South Street, 400 South Street in Philadelphia. And don't forget, we didn't get a chance to do the whole ad tonight with Summit Adjusters. Make sure before you call your insurance company, pick up the phone and dial 215-752-0560, 215-752-0560 in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And tell them Chef sent you. And with that, make sure you follow the O&B Puckcast on X and Bluesky at O&B Puck, at O&B Puck. Of course, you can follow us on Facebook, YouTube. We appreciate all the likes, the follows, hit that notification bell. We really do appreciate it. And you can follow us on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, TuneIn, Amazon Audible. Just type in O&B Puckcast, and hopefully we'll come up with the larger formats. We're getting more people. If you could follow and subscribe, we really do appreciate it. It helps move us up the charts when people are looking for a Philadelphia Flyer podcast. So that's all we have for you tonight. Until next Tuesday with our season opener, thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. We hope you enjoyed it, and take care.